if you've seen last stream, you would know that, one, I titled it wrong. The previous stream should have said February 6th, not January. And also, I got my frame rate to work properly now. So now I can run it very smooth. Frames per second. Yeah. Finder works good for getting trees gone fast. So might as well use more here. That shouldn't spread across. Anyways, well that continues its work. Let's get rid of that quickly. It actually looks good now, okay. There we go. Okay, I'm able to do this much easier than with the VR. Because with the VR, the flying in creative seems to be much faster. Yeah. Yep. Lots of cool stuff I'm building. Maybe I'll just stop that for now. I was checking my battery percentage on my controller. And it's high enough that I don't need to have my controller constantly plugged in now. such interesting things I've seen, specifically memes on the internet, like this one involving Minecraft. I'm just saying, like, basically what it said is, like, in 1929 or something, a law was formed to make child labor illegal, so that children could not be forced to have jobs. One such job being coal miners. And the second part of the meme was showing that currently one of the most popular video games with children is Minecraft. And then saying, the children yearn for the mines. That's just what the whole meme is. That's just the whole meme. Most popular game, Minecraft. The children yearn for the mines. Yeah. It seems to be very much true. And it seems just people just like games with blocks. Because Tetris was also like one of the #1 top selling games. Nah, that's good. That's better. The way to do this properly. Have a spacing of 2 is good. And okay. The flat earthers are interesting. Okay, yeah. A thing I thought would be fun to do, I used to do it on my previous streams, is I like to talk about random things. Random things on my mind, just share my opinion. I know that's not really the thing you should to do on, or yeah, it's not really the thing to do on the internet, but I do because it's interesting. Because then people might find what I think interesting. The flat earthers, they're not the brightest, but sometimes they come up with like the most interesting ideas for how to do like tests, and they would sound like sometimes their idea for like a way to test things tends to be relatively smart-ish, like in their way of thinking. Like this one guy I heard about. He was trying to use a laser thermometer to measure the temperature of the sun. And if you know anything about laser thermometers and how they work, a laser thermometer can't detect accurately that far. Because like the sun is like millions of kilometers away, whereas the effective range of a laser thermometer is like 15 feet, or like 6 to 5 feet away from what you're aiming at, will give you the most accurate results. So he's there essentially like 1,000, like trillions of feet away. Probably about 20,000 times the distance. 20,000 times greater than the effective distance of what he's using. And he does get results that are somewhat okay, that somewhat make sense. If he points it at the sun, the answer he keeps getting is around like 100 or 200. That's relatively hot, so you know it somewhat works. It just gives you results that are way too low. And the thing that confused this guy a lot, it was funny, him getting confused about it. He points it directly at the sun, gets like 100, 200, and then from the sun, he points it slightly this way, he gets 17 degrees, and then he points all the way this way, and he gets negative 10 degrees. Well, that makes sense because like the sun's here, it's going to be really hot. You point at that, it gives you the 100. Makes sense. Point like somewhat near where the sun is, like here, where the sun's here, it's like 17. But then all the way up here, negative 10, that makes sense. Because, you know, that's like very far from the sun, and space is cold. Like, we're not near anything that's creating heat. Like, probably the temperature that's in the, like, past Pluto in our solar system. Or past the outer edges of our solar system. The Oort cloud, I think is what it's referred to. Past that, I think it's like I think it's like 0 Kelvin or something. And 0 Kelvin is like searching it up. I'm searching it up quickly. Yeah, so Kelvin in 0 degrees Kelvin is negative 273.15 degrees Celsius. Or for any Americans that are people from the United States who happen to be watching, that's negative 459 degrees Fahrenheit. That's relatively cold. That's the temperature at which atoms will cease movement. Also known as absolute zero. Essentially, nothing happens at that temperature with atoms or cells. They're like more solid than solid. Because like everything, 100% of everything is going to be solid at below freezing. But like things below at 0 Kelvin, like nothing happens. Nothing will do. Nothing will happen. Like that's below. You may think it's impossible to get to something more solid than being in a solid state of matter, but no, probably 0 Kelvin is the most solid. Yeah. Now, I'll actually just search what the temperature of space is. The temperature of space. 2.7 Kelvin. Okay. So space is actually 2 Kelvin. Cool. Which is about negative 270 degrees Celsius or negative 455. Yep. Just so people know, the boiling temperature of water in Celsius is 100 Celsius. And boiling temperature of water in Kelvin is 373 Kelvin. Maybe I should start using Kelvin and temperature when I'm talking about things now. Because Kelvin is used by every country for science purposes. But then again, not everyone's a scientist. Or not everyone knows Kelvin easily. Yep. Actually, it's 0 degrees. Yeah, so 273 Kelvin is freezing temperature. If something ends up lower than that, yeah, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And it would probably take a few years to thaw out. Not sure how many years it'd take for something to thaw out from 0 Kelvin. That'd actually be interesting to find out. Because I think, like, the lower the temperature you store something at, the longer it stays good for. Imagine how long it could preserve something. Well, actually, yeah. If something's at 0 Kelvin, it's staying preserved indefinitely. As long as it's kept, frozen. You could probably freeze something to the point of being 0 Kelvin and just store it, like, in the open, probably. It'd probably actually be cold enough to just freeze anything that it touches, too. Or anything nearby. Because temperature radiates, so I'd assume cold temperatures also radiate. Well, they do. I have experience with that. You ever freeze a water bottle and put your hand near it after it's frozen and how it feels super cold near it? That's what it is. That's the cold temperature radiating from it, I think. And, like, cold temperature is kind of interesting. How cold temperatures work. Yeah. If anyone listens or pays attention to these conversations that I start, you would know, everyone would know who's watching this. Everyone who's watching this would know that I have ADHD. Well, I guess you know now, too. The reason I'm mentioning this is that's why I keep going from one topic to another. It's difficult for me to stick talking to one topic at a time. ADHD and ADD are two different things. Another thing I thought I'd mention. Yeah. ADHD is a person who's hyperactive at times and also easily distracted or causes distractions easily. Yep. But most of the time, from what I've heard about, people when thinking about ADHD only focus on like one or two parts of it. It's either the AD part or the HD part. Like, people with ADHD could have definitely not like a job that's boring. Because if you give a person with ADHD a job that tends to be boring, you know what's going to happen? Nothing will happen. The job will not get done because if it's boring, they're not going to want to do it. Because they're either going to get some of it done, but then get too bored to continue, or just decide they don't feel like doing it anymore, or they're going to forget what they were doing. Anyways, so back to the whole... Oh yeah, that's why I was going through like Kelvin and stuff. Because of that guy with the flat earther, okay. The flat earthers have very interesting ideas. There's some that think that there's an edge to the earth. And I think it's all based off of the whole idea within in most religions that there's like what's referred to as the firmament, some sort of invisible barrier above the earth that keeps things in. So they assume, okay, the sun can't be that far. Like, we can feel the heat from it. It shouldn't be that far. It's probably close. And it's funny seeing them make these assumptions, because then they attempt to do math based on their idea of how they think it is, but then they get some unexpected or incorrect number. I bet if one of them did some tests using a really cheap method, using the tools that they can afford, and then later on they were able to, I don't know, somehow develop or purchase super duper high quality tools that can get them their information they need for their theories themselves. Because most of the time they won't trust information given to them, because they're like, hey, you're trying to tell me this, which would imply that I'm wrong. And then they're like, well then, since you're doing that, I want to find my own information for myself so that I can get all the facts. And I guess that makes sense. Like, that makes a lot of sense. If you're trying to find out something that you want to know, you wouldn't use someone else's answer if it's the same as what everyone else is saying. Especially if you believe that whatever everyone else is saying is incorrect. So, that makes a lot of sense. I guess the flat earthers make some interesting points that kind of make sense. Like, if they're thinking the earth is flat, and and that would mean that, okay, there must be some sort of distance in which things do not show up or don't appear anymore, or that you can't see them past. And that would explain that you can't see buildings off in the distance. If the earth was flat, that would make sense. It's just, at some point, your vision is cut off and you can't see anymore. I guess that's how they explain how things disappear over the horizon. But then again, yeah. So some things they say make sense, which is good. And then other things... Oh, no. Continue the thought. Okay. So, them thinking that there is some sort of distance at which vision gets cut off would explain why they think the sun and moon must be so close. That's because if the vision gets cut off at a certain point, they wouldn't be able to see it if it was outside that distance. So lots of things they say make sense to, one combined with their other information they're saying. So yeah, they do make some pretty good points. But yeah. And I'm thinking actually actually no, I won't start that. I was about to start talking about how I think it all started with the flat Earth conspiracy stuff. But like, it's funny some of the things I've seen them say, whether they did in fact say them or not. Like Elon Musk, I think. There's a picture I saw posted to Reddit. I'm not sure if it was real or not. There's a chance for either. But basically, it was a picture showing Elon Musk on his Twitter account asking the Flat Earth Society Twitter why there's not a round, flat Mars society. And their answer was that Mars, unlike Earth, has been observed to be round. And it's hilarious. So I'm not sure whether it's real or not. It'd be funny if it is. So it seems all they need to be convinced that the Earth is not flat would be just them actually seeing it. But then again, like, lots of weird stuff. And I think most of the weird theories tend to be based on, like, their religion. I like to consider myself somewhat religious, but most of the time when I think about like religious stuff, I tend to like to try to think of how science, like things can fit with science as well. Like there's a way to make science and religion fit together and to make everyone happy. Like with the whole God created the first humans thing. There's another way to think about it that fits the whole evolution, the truth of the evolution into that as well. And that would be, why don't we say some higher being just, let's say they put the first living cells on Earth. And, you know, that makes sense. You know? And they say that people are created in God's, or supposedly created in God's image. So that would mean, it's a way to fit the whole evolution thing into that is we could think of it like the cells put there by the higher being were put there with the intent to shape to be the likeness of said creator. And there we go. We got something that appeases both. It works for both ideas. And like the reason I'm thinking, like it makes sense, a lot of sense the way I work it out to be, because like if that's how it is, if a higher being were to have put the cells, that explains how the first cells appeared when there was nothing but a flaming ball of rock. Because I'm quite certain that in a completely sterile environment, like the Earth would have been when it was just water, and heat, or hot rocks on it, like nothing can survive there. And like if it was a whole ocean, there wouldn't be any plants because, completely sterile environment, no cells living in it, nothing to make plants. So the single cells to create the ecosystem that were put there by a higher being makes sense. That's how there's life appearing out of nowhere. But yeah, it's a thing I thought about because I don't think anyone else has thought about trying to combine the creation and evolution ideas. But anyways, I just say what's on my mind because I like to know what people think about certain things. And comments should be available because they are on all these streams. Like some streams, I wish I knew how to disable the comments specifically for really quickly because of people verbally harassing me. And I think it was hilarious. Like the one time that it did happen. And the person's response to that, to the verbal harassment, when I called them out for it, saying that's verbal harassment. And they're like, no it ain't. Yeah. Any type of language that is unaccepted by the person it's being used against counts as verbal harassment. Don't say any inappropriate things or anything to unintentionally make me feel uncomfortable. It's just common sense. Not really common sense. Well, I guess kinda. Common sense by most standards. Most people would agree you shouldn't say things to make people uncomfortable. Like comments that even mildly would suggest something that the person never said, was never okay with in the beginning. Like, yeah. I'm going through this just so that, saying this just so that it doesn't happen again. Don't want it to happen again. It was very weird the first time. Yep. But yeah, the flat earthers come up with very interesting theories based on interesting things and the information they're able to gather with what they have. One thing I find kind of funny is when they attempt to prove everyone else wrong. I'm not sure the full story on what happened, but from what I understand, essentially NASA allowed this one flat earther to go into space. Obviously with a bunch of trained astronauts, so nothing bad happened. But essentially, they get there to space, and then realize that they were wrong the entire time. That's the thing I think is kind of funny sometimes. Someone thinks they're going to be right about something and prove everyone else wrong, and then they get there and they're disappointed. They think they finally have their chance to prove everyone in the world wrong. I like when that happens, though. When a person tries so hard to prove others wrong for whatever reason, and they just fail. What's even better in those situations? The thing I don't like if someone ends up finding out that they're wrong about something is when they keep trying to prove everyone wrong even though they know they're wrong now. Like, it makes no sense. Like, they found out they weren't correct, so why do they keep trying to prove everyone else wrong? And then due to them continuing to try, it gets the people who were, like, alongside them in the beginning to now keep trying and believing that too. Like, 'cause then that just causes more misinformation to spread about something that people were wrong about to begin with. Sometimes the flat earthers go too far in their things. Like one image I saw, it was a science textbook, an image of a science textbook, and the person who posted the image, their mom is a flat earther, and their mom vandalized the textbook by mentioning a part that mentions that Earth is a planet. They scribble over that and put plane. But, like, doesn't a planet just refer to anything in space that has geological activity? So, you know, a planet could be a flat surface if gravity allowed it. So in that one example, like, there was no point in correcting or attempting to correct the textbook. Like, no matter what viewpoint, it was technically always correct. Like, just because someone thinks one thing, that doesn't mean they should force their belief onto everyone. Yeah. There's a friend of mine who says things that are very difficult to agree with. And make it very difficult to try to piece together the way his opinion on things. like, from what he's told, from what I know from knowing him, he's very, very much against fascists. Or people, like, thinking that people should, you know, be eliminated specifically due to a belief. He's against that way of thinking. At least I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But the thing I'm thinking, though, is like a certain group of belief shouldn't be stopped and it deserves to be supported. That is, unless they're trying to force their belief or their way onto everyone. Yeah. The thing that Tucker keeps joking about is that all furries should be executed or killed or something. Like, I don't understand it. I know enough about them, from what I heard, to know that they're not evil. Like Tucker keeps trying to suggest. Like I asked Tucker why he's against them once. Or actually, that was just yesterday. And he explained, and from what he said, I see why people don't like them. It's that people are getting the terms furry and zoophile confused. Because the zoophile people, furries are against them too. I've seen that. I've heard about that. Learned about it. From what I understand, all furries, they just want to dress up as animals, that's all. That's their whole main thing. It's just they like dressing up as animals. And I understand that. They think they're cool, so they dress up as them. No big deal. No need to get mad at them. Just because they're doing what they like. Yeah, just because you don't understand them doesn't mean you should hate them. Not saying I am one, I'm just saying. Like, yeah. Just because they like one thing doesn't mean you should hate them. And I get why people have like big disputes and arguments over certain beliefs, because that's happened quite a lot in the past. That's just a thing people do. This is kind of odd. I don't know why my streams always turn into this. Oh yeah, I'm gonna stream just because I want to potentially get some viewers, more subscribers maybe, get me closer to being monetized. I already got the viewer amount, like the view time necessary. I just need the amount of subscribers necessary. wonder why my stream size end up this way. I bet some people find my stream. I bet some people find my streams quite interesting to watch. Stop leaking, you have more showers.
You have to do some of that, otherwise if you're that's exactly what I want to have happen. And then like I'll leave this on the desk. Actually, no, I'll bring it with us because then we can set it.
Lots of interesting discussions that happen on my channel. I said I have no clue why this, or why or how this keeps happening. It's kind of funny. I decided I'm going to stream just to do like a stream, so I can like talk and have, you know, people actually listening to what I'm saying. Or talk just to hear myself, so I can be heard, essentially, is one way of putting it. Well, it's kind of strange. Every time I do a stream like this, it turns into some big discussion about beliefs and stuff. Two. With the whole discussion and mentioning freeze, it's not that I this is the middle. 34. Check what the staff room area height is. 61. Okay, that's cool. not saying I fully 100% agree with them. But it's kind of the same scenario with my friends. Not that I 100% agree with. Like, the whole false representation stuff, false representation of different groups, like, it kind of needs to stop. Like, just because the furries tend to dress up as animals and sexualize the characters they come up with doesn't mean they're into the illegal stuff, anything illegal. Just like,
I agree with the name. That's pretty on time up here.
Well, it's easy, I think, easy to say. Just because FNAF fans think, just because Five Nights at Freddy's fans think that William Afton is a cool character, doesn't mean they're going to go around doing what he does. You know? Just because people think Five Nights at Freddy's is cool doesn't mean they're going to go shoving kids into robots. Three, four, five, six. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. 6. That was one of the discussions that happened.
There she is.
Yep.
Hi. You with your boy? Yeah.
It's interesting how some of the discussions they have, I start, or random things I start talking about during my streams tend to go. Yep. Started talking about how flat earthers have interesting ways of coming up with their ideas. Talking about this guy. He tried to use a laser thermometer to measure the temperature of the sun. Yeah. The answer he got through the thermometer was kind of interesting. The answer he got was 100 degrees. Which is not correct. Yeah. And going on to explain the reason he must have thought it was close enough to use the laser thermometer.
Because the Earth is flat?
Oh yeah, because they're thinking that if the Earth is flat, then the reason they can't see things that are far in the distance that they should be able to see if the Earth is flat is because there's probably some sort of limit to how far you can see. And they're like, well, if I can see the sun, that means the sun must be within that distance. Like, the way they think, it makes sense. You know, if you put into context, like, if you factor in all the other variables that would exist due to how they think everything works, then it makes sense that you should be able to measure the temperature of the sun with a laser thermometer. Because, like, if the sun, with how they're thinking, if the sun's close enough to see, it's close enough to measure with a laser thermometer. And you can probably get to it quite easily. Yeah, it's probably how, if you think about it the way they think, with the knowledge they have of it, I guess, then, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I would.
Then I was going on saying, about other stuff, other people with different beliefs and things. Yeah. Interesting how a topic about flat earthers can go into a discussion about how you shouldn't hate people just because of what they believe in. A weird thing I learned about is that apparently freedom of speech is apparently not one of the is technically not a thing in Canada. Technically isn't. I think it's called the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Is the list of what is like a right that people have a right to. I think is what it's called. But anyways, freedom of speech is not one of those things. Which I think is kind of interesting. So yeah, if you're ever having a discussion with a fellow Canadian, and you tell them they can't say something, and they're like, yes, I can. I have I have the right to freedom of speech. You just go, well, according to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, you don't. I think that's what it's called, actually. I may be incorrect, but what it's called. Search it up. 284. We'll make it 285. $285 just because I feel like it. No, I'll search that up. Yep. It's the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Freedom of speech is not a thing. Yep. So if any Canadian, if someone in Canada tries to share with you an opinion you don't agree with, legally, you could tell them that they're not allowed to say that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which makes it sound to me like the SCP Foundation must have been created in Canada originally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow. Lines up perfectly with this door. If anyone, yeah. Canada has some weird things with it. And in case anyone wants to know where I learned that fact, civics and citizenship class. It's also funny how sometimes people misinterpret in Canada. People in Canada sometimes misinterpret their rights and freedoms, like those people with the Freedom Convoy, misinterpreting the right to peaceful protest. I think because from what it seems like, they've gotten to the point where it's no longer peaceful. Yeah. In civics and citizenship class, we did a Kahoot. It was a bunch of things involving Canada, and that's what the questions was. That's what the questions were. One of the questions was, which of these is something that is not on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? And the answer was freedom of speech, which was unexpected. Yeah. Yeah. So what it says essentially, that Canadians are free to follow the religion of their choice. In addition, they're guaranteed freedom of thought, belief, and expression. So you're allowed to spread your beliefs and your opinions, but you can be legally shut up. Your right to speak can be withheld, or your ability to speak can legally be withheld. just some cool Canada facts I thought I'd mention. I don't think there's really any need to talk about them that much. So yeah, just a cool fact about Canada. I don't understand why freedom of speech isn't on there, though. Most other countries have freedom of speech. Maybe it's because the freedom of expressing beliefs is probably that it means that, essentially. And if that's the case, then it makes sense. Because if freedom of belief and freedom of expression are things, well, then there's no need to put freedom of speech, because essentially it's already included with that, I guess. I'm thinking, yeah, if I'm correct, that doesn't, yeah. I think essentially what that means is that just speech and expression are essentially just allowed, or just a privilege, then. A thing I remember hearing my dad say a bunch to me when I was in elementary school, because sometimes I'd get into trouble for no reason and not be allowed to take the bus. It's a weird thing that schools do. If you misbehave on the bus once, they can basically take away you're no longer allowed to use the bus to get to school, essentially. But yeah, the thing my dad always said during those times and stuff was essentially just, it's a privilege, not a right. Which, yeah, it's essentially the truth with how that was. So yeah. Does anyone else, I wonder if anyone else who eventually watches this has experience with having their bus privileges revoked. Or if that's a thing with other schools. But yeah, Canada has lots of interesting things with it. Interesting rules, interesting laws. Lots of interesting things. Like, one thing I've learned most people tend to think is true about Canada is that Canada invented hockey. And it's funny to think about how like people will react to finding out that that's not true. Because, you know, most people think, yeah, it's the truth, yeah. Canadians invented hockey and stuff. But no, that ain't true. However, Canada did invent, the natives of Canada invented the sport called lacrosse. That was invented by the natives. From what I've heard, that's just how the natives used that as like a peaceful form of battle, or a more peaceful form of battle. You know, instead of straight up just having a war against another tribe, they'd play lacrosse. From what I understand, I assume it would have been like relatively violent. Anything used as an alternative form of battle tends to be violent anyways. I think an interesting and easy way to describe how Canada got its name, or way to like sum it up. You know how sometimes like how tourists to different countries are depicted in like cartoons and stuff, right? They ask what something is, the person responds with their word for it, like using their language's word for what that is, and the person's like, oh, and then they say it entirely, and they assume that what they're saying is in English.
Noah, Angie.
Okay, well, that's the end of the stream. See you in the next one.